I'm an avid hunter. I've been doing it since I was a kid, and not to brag, but I'm pretty much a legend in my hometown. I once brought down a 400-pound bull elk with a single clean shot from over 800 yards away. No matter the season, I've always been successful in my adventures. It was early December when I set out on what promised to be a great hunt. The weather was near below freezing, but I didn't mind. All the animals had to deal with the cold, and that meant that, as a hunter, I could too. The snowflakes cascaded down lightly as frost clung to the spindly trees. The grass was patchy and covered by a veil of ice, and the aspen trees were but crooked skeletons, stripped bare. The sky was a dull, hazy gray with the sun just a dim, pale circle hanging overhead. It would have seemed like just another cold morning in the wilderness of North Dakota, but I felt nervous for some reason, in a way I had never felt before. Even when I went on my first hunts for dangerous game like bear as a novice hunter, I had never felt this jumpy and high-strung. I felt a nearly crippling sickness of fear eating at me as I slowly traversed through the frozen highlands just below treeline. I found myself constantly looking over my shoulder nervously into the frigid vastness, and I even had to stop and sit down several times to collect myself. I was sweating like mad, and my breathing was heavy and labored, my heart like a jackhammer. The quiet, little sounds I normally looked for as a sign of game nearby now made me jump and flinch like some kind of little kid. About 2 hours into my hike, the uneasy feeling became so intense that I could have sworn something was right behind me. I could nearly feel breath on the back of my neck, and I could imagine hands reaching forwards, about to close around me. I became so frightened that I couldn't even bring myself to turn around in fear that something would be there, despite how the voice of reason in my head assured me that there was nothing. I was sure that there was nothing there. I hadn't heard anything behind me the entire time I had been walking, not the crunch of snow nor the snapping of twigs. Surely, if something was as hauntingly close as it felt, seemingly barely an inch away, I would hear something. I would have heard something. Despite all this, the creeping feeling kept filling me with dread, and I couldn't make myself turn around to prove my worries wrong. It was like every fiber of my subconscious was screaming at me, warning me that I wouldn't like what I found standing right behind me. It got so bad that I took a long, shallow U-turn and started heading back to my truck parked at the entrance to the hunting grounds. I had never given up on a hunt without a kill. Not once. I was sure my reputation would be tarnished, but somehow I didn't care. I was so utterly terrified, shaking to my very core. Not once during the hike back did the feeling lessen, or did I feel the presence leave or drift away. No, if anything, it was slowly getting closer. The hairs on the back of my neck were standing straight up, and my feverish shaking and anxiety had exhausted me nearly to the point of collapsing, but I couldn't rest. It wasn't quite a chase, but I had the creeping feeling now that if I stopped, whatever was behind me wouldn't. I found myself speeding up ever so slowly, which was a problem because the faster I went, the more I began to realize that I wouldn't be able to slow down anymore. By the time I was nearly sprinting at a pace I knew I couldn't maintain, yet still nearly 3 miles from my truck, I panicked and did the only thing I could think to do. I lifted my 12 gauge over my shoulder and fired directly behind me. Nothing. The ear-shattering shot exploded out into the cold air, and the repercussions echoed throughout the frozen vastness, but there was no sound of impact, no grunt of pain, nothing. In the immediate aftermath, I was able to momentarily trick myself, and before I could stop myself, I turned around. Nothing. There was nothing there, nor was there a sign that there ever had been. I practically broke down in a mix of relief and rage. I knew it all along. Dear God, I had literally just shot blindly behind me. I could have killed someone. When and how did I become this deranged? My mind slowly cleared up and my breathing slowed, but I would be lying if I said I didn't still feel a momentary twinge of fear as I turned back around to head back to my truck. Sure, there was still nothing there, but as I kept walking, it became all too clear that the feeling still hadn't gone away. I was almost enraged as I found it slowly growing stronger again, my unease building to intolerable levels again. Sure enough, by the time I reached the edge of the grounds and could see my truck just up ahead, I was once again absolutely certain that something was but mere inches behind me. But something was even more wrong this time. I hadn't really noticed up until now, but I can now faintly hear footsteps, ever so slowly getting off sync with my own, and they were coming from right behind me. I finally reached my truck, but quickly realized as I approached that opening the door would require me to stop, something I had once again become convinced that I couldn't do anymore. Panicking and trying to figure out how I would get in without stopping or slowing my pace, I began walking loops around my truck. I tried so hard to keep my pace slow and deliberate, but adrenaline was pumping through my heart and it was like a machine gun in my chest. Soon enough, I found that I had started to slowly speed up despite my best efforts. It was about the 4th or 5th lap around my truck when I suddenly began to see it. Blood stains, small splatters of crimson red on the frosted ground, and each lap I could see more and more, eventually creating a line in the path I was walking, as if I was bleeding and leaving a trail behind me, except I wasn't bleeding. I wasn't the one who had been shot.